Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk NODEsense podcast. This is block 4 in the series, and we just had a great conversation with Young Beef from Subsocial.
Subsocial is laying the foundation for the future of Web3's decentralized social interactions.
And they're building the tools to tackle some of the most heated topics in Web 2, like censorship, moderation, all those bot accounts, and content monetization. So, as always, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Arrow.
And let's jump right into the episode. Young Beef, content lead and community manager at Subsocial. Thanks for joining the podcast with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So I just want to kick it off right away here. I know you get asked this probably a lot, but can we just get a brief introduction about the project, Subsocial, and maybe even a little background on how it started, and also for yourself, how you got into it?
Yeah, so started by our founder Alex in 2019, I think. He went to it was either Polkadot Decoded or Sub-Zero conference about Substrate. And Gavin Wood was there, and he basically took a brand new laptop, like with nothing on it, and built a blockchain in like 30 minutes using Substrate because it's so easy. So Alex decided he wanted to use that. So he started working on Subsocial as like a side project. And then in 2020, I think he went full time with it. Got a couple guys, raised some money. I came on board in August of 2021 last year. Everyone else that was on the team at the time was basically developers. So I'm the content lead and community manager. So it was basically the first community facing person. I also do a lot of other stuff though, like business development and things like that. We've got a bigger team now. I think we're at 14 people now.
Wow.
It's been some pretty good growth over the last year. A little background on myself. I first got into crypto early 2018, right after that big bull run. That's back when there wasn't really much built on Ethereum at the time, but people were playing around with smart contracts. I was pretty heavily involved, not like on the project team, but just in the community for this project is called Zephyr. It's basically like a casino built on top of a pyramid scheme, which sounds ridiculous, but the white paper's still out there. You can go read it. It was a really good idea. But they ultimately shut it down because they didn't know if they'd end up in prison or not.
Oh, man.
And then after that, kind of got out of crypto for the bear market, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
And then got back into it at the beginning of last year. Thanks to my brother. Found my way to Polkadot Kusama, and I've always been in it for not necessarily in it for the tech exclusively, but in terms of like investing, I take a long time frame. And so with that in mind, I do follow the tech, and I think Polkadot Kusama has the best tech, so that's why I'm here.
Awesome. So how did you find Subsocial? How did you find the team?
That was all thanks to Chaos DAO and the creator of Chaos DAO, Allison Bob. The last summer, 2021. This was before Kusama crowd loans even started. Got involved on Twitter, and Alice and Bob decided to create a Discord server for some of us that were really active on Twitter and the Dasama space. That evolved into Chaos DAO now, which you may know of. But around the time, I was looking to start working in the space. So I told people that I was looking for a job if they knew of any, and I had applied to some, but then Alice and Bob sent me a tweet from the Subsocial account, and I had not heard of them until that point. The tweet said they were looking for a technical writer to help with developer documentation, and I'm not a developer, so not qualified for that at all, but I applied anyways. And then started talking with Alex, our founder, and one thing led to another, and ended up in this role.
Awesome. That sounds that sounds like a perfect story to write down too.
Yeah, I wrote a full blog post a month or two ago about my whole story of getting into Web3.
Oh, nice.
I can send you guys the link if you want to put it in the show notes or something.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We'd love to read that.
Perfect.
So a big thing about Subsocial is it's kind of got this really large scope. In the sense that it's kind of like the love letter to replace all traditional social medias. Can you maybe touch on like how that's going to happen? Because that sounds like a pretty lofty goal.
Yeah, there's definitely been some times where I think about it and I'm just like, man, how are we gonna do this? But I mean, if you think a little deeper about it, and when you start to really understand what subsocial is, in some ways it is still like that, but in other ways it's not. So with traditional social networks like Facebook or Twitter, you have the application that we see, like the website or the app on our phone, and that's what we think of as Facebook. But they have this huge back end with all their servers, all their code, the network, all of that. That part is what Subsocial is trying to replace, basically. Um, so, Facebook's servers and Twitter's servers are not connected. You can't go on Twitter and see content from Facebook and vice versa. With Subsocial, we're trying to unify all of these different backends, basically. And then developers and different teams can go build social applications, social networks, etc., or even other things like Airbnb or Shopify. They can build those applications, but then they plug them into Subsocial to function as the backend. So every social network can share content and user base, which is very beneficial. They can still curate things if you want sort of a specific theme. So you can have a social network that's just about dogs and not show anything about cats. But the main advantage there, it's like all these problems with traditional Web 2 social networks like censorship and algorithms, stuff, whatever, is like, yeah, you can quit using Facebook if you want, but the exit fee is super high. All of your content, your friends are on there. You can't take them with you to Twitter. And so people don't leave. And so then these companies can just do all this bad stuff that they do. We can't really do anything about it. If we make it where you can switch between social networks and there's no problem with it at all, you can take your users, you can take your content, your friends, everything with you, then it's much more of like a open market with competitiveness that disincentivizes bad actors like this. So sort of back to your original question is like, yeah, it's a big mission, but we're not necessarily doing it totally alone in terms of we're just building the back end. And we'll have other teams that will be building all of these different front ends, like Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like really forward compatible type of thinking where you could take everything that you've done on one platform and move to another platform and continue moving forward, and that incentivizes competitiveness, like you said. Um, just to touch on that same aspect there, does this subsocial need to be on the relay chain to do this type of interoperability?
Just between the various social networks, no. So we used to actually have a solo chain, just a standalone substrate chain. But we do have a paired chain now, and we actually just recently moved everything to our paired chain. And if we haven't already, they will be shutting down the solo chain, I think. So we can still do what we set out to do as a paired chain, but with the added advantage of being in an actual ecosystem. We put out an article about 6 months ago on our blog. It's titled "Why Subsocial is the Best." It's a little funny, but it mentioned a couple of the other Web3 social projects. So the two good examples, there's Lens Protocol on Ethereum, which is part of an ecosystem. You can interact with that and then go interact with DeFi like super easily because it's all on the same chain. But they lose out on a lot of customizability and the ability to have cool features because it's running on someone else's chain, basically. With Subsocial, it's a purpose-built chain just for one specific thing. So you can do a lot of custom things that might not be well suited to DeFi, but are great for social networking. For example, our ability to have lower transaction fees using our energy system. But then you have other solo chains that are like purpose built for social networking, like Hive or Steemit. Those are the original Web3 social chains. But they are totally isolated basically. So you have to use bridges if you want to do DeFi. You can't do DeFi on those chains. You have to bridge to another chain and do DeFi there. And we all know the bridges aren't great. They're not secure. They're clumsy, whatever. So by being in the Polkadot Kusama ecosystem as a parachain, we get the best of both worlds. We have solo chains. They're a standalone chain, basically. No, sorry, I can mix my words up. We have a custom built chain, so we can do all the cool stuff that allows us to do. But then we can use the cross-chain messaging protocol, and easily interact with DeFi and other stuff like that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. Like, saw that you guys are like partnered with like RMRK, and all those NFTs could probably come in a huge use on Subsocial too, right? With their forward compatibility as well.
Yeah, right now, technically, like all of our posts and comments are actually NFTs. But we've talked
Oh,
about switching those all to the Remark 2 standard, because I think that would allow us to do a lot more potentially cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, some of the partnerships we could do with other parachains are really cool. Probably like the easiest example is if we work with the Oak Network team. They have automation, so you can go on Twitter and schedule a tweet for 6 hours from now. There's not a way to do that in a decentralized way on the blockchain right now, but if we use the automation tech from Oak Network, then we can do that easily. Or use decentralized identifiers from Kilt as like a proof of humanity thing. So, on Twitter, only a couple people have the blue check mark because Twitter has to keep up with it all. But in the future, everyone should be able to verify that they're an actual human, right?
yeah, that's just sounds like everything you're talking about is just helps promote growth, right? Every parachain, all these in the Polkadot ecosystem, Kusama ecosystem, all helping each other like push further in the development, right? Like that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I like it so much is the cooperative attitude is just amazing. But it really is that the tide rises all ships. If one
Mhm.
parachain hits it big, everyone wins.
Yeah, that really is a good way of saying it.
Yeah, I just kind of like the idea that everything is going to be on chain. So like you set your one identity, and then that follows you from all platforms that you know could eventually get onboarded. I guess you could say to Subsocial. So if the Etsy of Subsocial ever has a front end built for it, your back end that you've been using with all your posts from the say I know we keep using these Web 2 technologies, but I guess that's the best way to say it. Like your Twitter Web 3 analogy kind of follows you around, which is neat.
Yeah, I mean, I reference like Web 2 platforms a lot when I'm talking about Subsocial because it's the best way to understand it. It does get a little bit into the weeds once you
Yeah.
start getting into the technical specifics.
Well, I think that's just a mindset that we're all kind of living in right now, just because we're all so used to the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Instagrams. Like I guess I'm kind of like the use case for Subsocial. Like I was a guy that used Facebook growing up and said, you know what, I'm really unhappy with their data practices and I don't like them having a retained copy of all my data. So I did what I thought was best and I, went through the deletion process. Now, was it actually deleted after those, 90 days wait time that they said if you log in everything stays the same? You know, I don't think so. I'm imagining that they would keep a copy of all that because that's their bread and butter, right? And
Yeah.
I think that Subsocial has the opportunity with what's being built right now to kind of change that mindset with, you know, just like you said earlier, that fear that, if you're going to leave the platform, your content stays there and you kind of have to start from scratch. So I think that's really awesome. Um, and I know that there's a software development kit that Subsocial's kind of putting together to help get people to build Web3 apps and help build, I guess, their like the dream uh, media platform that they want to have connected to the back end. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so our SDK, we've been doing a lot of work on our developer experience recently. We participated in the Polkadot North America hackathon that was 1 or 2 months ago. We got a couple people that built some apps for that. But we definitely want to foster as much of a developer community as we can, because at the end of the day, we are building a layer 1 blockchain. We have front-end devs and we have a web app of our own, but it's just because no one else is building a web app right now, and people aren't going to post to Subsocial from the Polkadot.js extrinsics page, right? But the we need some killer apps for Subsocial to really hit it big, and I think they really need to be unique. Like we talk about, we can build Twitter on Subsocial, but we can make a really nice looking website that looks exactly like the Twitter website and launch it on Subsocial, and it will seem familiar, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to move. So we need something new and innovative that really uses the strengths of blockchain and Web3 and the Polkadot ecosystem in particular. And so, we need development teams to come and build those things on top of our chain while we add as many features to the chain as we can to enable them to build that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. Kind of like the cart before the horse. But is Subsocial building any kind of like demo product that a user like myself who'd want to jump in and be like, I want to see how I can contribute. I want to see what it's like. Is there something like that that's going to be available as well?
I think we already have a couple demo examples in our docs, like some other websites of like example apps. And at the beginning of the hackathon, our DevX lead Tushar, he did a 1 or 2 hour video showing how to sort of build like a Twitter-like dApp in like 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
And with the SDK, I believe that you don't need to know how to use Rust or Substrate. I think if you are like a web dev and you know JavaScript, I'm pretty sure that you can just use the SDK, and it's pretty simple.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch upon what we were talking about a little bit earlier regarding like the censorship stuff. Now, this is probably like the hottest topic in, you know, everyday news, but regarding censorship on Subsocial, what can you envision would be done? Let's say there's apps running and the next TikTok is out on Subsocial and it's onboarding people. What is censorship going to look like for Subsocial, and where do they where's the line drawn? Is it kind of figured out by the community, or what do you think?
So we draw a line between censorship and moderation
Hmm.
on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They're pretty much the same thing. If you get into more like a private group on Facebook, there's kind of separated then where the admin of the group can delete your thing, like they'll moderate you without it being something that Facebook would censor because of its own rules. So Subsocial is totally censorship resistant, but we have 3 avenues of moderation because of the way the tech stack is set up. So, if you're posting on a blockchain, you can't be censored. Basically, that's the nature of decentralized. But on chain, so we have the concept of spaces. Posts have to be made in a space, and you can think of a space as a Twitter page, a subreddit, a Facebook group, a Medium blog. So it can be personalized. You can make it into a group. It's pretty flexible. But you can have moderation in the space, and this is on the blockchain. So the owner or owners of a space can moderate posts made in that space. And then also the actual content of a post, like the text and images, is not stored on chain. It's stored on IPFS. And then we just store the CID, the content identifier, of that on the blockchain to save space. So that content is hosted on someone's server somewhere that's running an IPFS node. And I believe that the people running those nodes can choose to not host stuff if they want. So probably the best example is if someone tries to upload child porn, it's going on to someone's server somewhere. That's probably illegal where they live. So unless they want the police to come knock their door down, they will unpin it from their IPFS node, and then it's basically moderated in terms of the storage layer.
Interesting.
And then the final layers in terms of the front end, so the different applications built on Subsocial. So like I mentioned earlier, you could have one app that's a social network just about dogs, so it wouldn't show stuff about cats. Obviously, on the Subsocial blockchain on the back end, you're going to have posts about dogs and you're going to have posts about cats. None of them are getting censored or deleted, but the dog social network will just simply not show the posts about cats because it's, they're trying to curate just for dogs. Cats aren't dogs, so they're not going to show the thing about cats.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for going through all of that with us. Um, just to touch upon the other thing that's kind of a huge deal with, I think also in crypto right now, it's kind of a problem that's happening is like the sock puppets, right? This is kind of a huge problem even for what's going on in Pocono Kusama right now with even like council and voting and all that stuff. So what do you think's the best way to handle something like that for Subsocial? It also a huge problem on Twitter. It's a massive problem on Twitter. But what's the best solution? Would you say that Subsocial can handle? Fake accounts. Is it maybe having a payment system, or is there something to do with deterring whales from coordinating voting or something like that? What do you think?
So by sock puppets, you mean like fake accounts and bots?
Yeah, like fake accounts, bots, or yeah, pretty much that.
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, we could work with Kilt or some other team to have like a proof of humanity thing. Um, and like on Twitter, most people don't have the check mark. But if we imagine in the future where 99% of accounts do have a check mark, then I think everyone would pretty much default to, if you don't have a check mark, I just assume that you're a scammer or something like that. The problem with that though is that you get to the point where rich people can basically just buy a bunch of accounts with check marks, like give people money to make an account and get themselves verified, and then give the account to the rich person. And at that point, though, if someone's trying to do like a large-scale bot operation or something, with being on a blockchain, there are transaction fees. So the cost of doing something is going to add up, especially if you try to do it at a large scale. Um, Beyond that, I'm not sure that there's much we can do to deter someone.
Yeah, I guess it's just like you said, like we need those other projects to get their platforms out, like Kilt, to verify that, you're a real person without maybe verifying or showing your actual identity, right?
Sure.
So we need that all out there.
Yeah, that, and it sounds like moderation is going to be, you know, I know that they're like, once again, we've talked about it already, but there are platforms that have like auto moderation, like YouTube, but
Yeah.
of course that can get abused. So having those multiple avenues is probably going to be a big deal for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about that after I finished talking there. The two things I mentioned are sort of like blockchain level, but then individual applications can also have, bot control type things as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's also going to be a big deal if, once again, it's kind of like a pay per post model. I can't imagine that the average person is going to want to, be willing to throw away their verified profile for a post that they know is going to incite some sort of response, right? So that might be another big deterrent to stuff like that happening as well.
Yeah, in regards to the paying, we did have an idea because we just released the energy system. So basically the way that works is you can burn some sub tokens and you'll get energy. And transaction fees are lower if you pay for them with energy than they are if you use sub tokens. So you're incentivized to use energy. So it's deflationary on the sub token, and you can't change the energy back into sub tokens. and they're also not transferable, so it's energy isn't really a token that you could sell or anything like that. However, when you burn the sub to make the energy, you can set it where the energy is created in someone else's account. So after that, they can't transfer it, but you can basically give energy to other people
Hmm.
by burning tokens. So the really cool thing about that is, like, obviously, yeah, I can give my friend energy so they can start posting without having to go buy a token. But the big implication is that teams running applications can give energy to their users, so their users never have to go get tokens. So it makes it much easier to onboard people to new applications being built. I put out a big article maybe a month and a half ago talking about how we can get grandma onto Subsocial, because that's sort of my litmus test, is if we make the user experience so good that my grandma can use Subsocial, then it's basically a home run. And there's no way she's going to go buy cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah.
So if we have some way where people just get on the app and they can post, that's way better. And then obviously the application has to pay for it somehow, so they could do something, either show ads or have like a $1 a month subscription fee, or we've had the idea of creator staking or DApp staking, like a Star does, if you're familiar with that. So that's some other app options to explore. But
Interesting. Yeah. So there's no current way for someone, like, say if we were wanting to like invest into Subsocial, is there's no way for us to stake currently or provide liquidity kind of thing?
no, so the token is not listed at the moment. There's no way to obtain it. Transfers are not enabled. The team is working on staking right now. I think that should be out pretty soon. I think it's almost done.
Awesome.
I believe it will be similar to the Moonbeam staking.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, just about what you're saying about the energy, that's honestly like refreshing to hear that it's not like another token that you can, farm or stake and then sell and you know, have a second coin attached to another, the sub coin. Like it's kind of refreshing to hear that it's going to be something that is easy to onboard people, and people are going to be using a lot more of energy than actual sub tokens and just operating on a social platform. That's really cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing with it is that um, we have a page on our web app for where you can burn tokens to get energy, and it will give you an estimate of how many transactions you could do with the sub token versus the energy that you'd get from burning it. And it really puts it in perspective. People are worried about, like, oh, I don't want to pay for a social network, but it's really cheap. I mean, the token's not listed, so we don't have a price, but um, there's 1 billion tokens, and with one token you can do about 50 transactions, and with energy you can do about 250.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can estimate whatever the valuation would be and then figure out how much it would cost, but it's very, very cheap.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's sounding like the only thing that's stopping this from being huge right now is just, there's still a lot going on with development, and you're going to need um like creative people and developers to start onboarding a front end to the back end. So I can only imagine where this thing's going to go in the future. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the tech still has a long way to go, and the hard part too is we're basically competing against Facebook and Twitter, and they've had 18 years of development or something like that. And also, even if we made it where people don't have to buy the token to be able to use it, right now they still have to set up a wallet, and that's too much of a barrier for 99% of the population at the moment, it seems like. So until we can figure out some solution, one of our ideas was just have a Web3 login and a Web2 login. So whatever web app you're using, if you don't want to set up a wallet, then you can basically just trade off the security and the decentralization, but still be able to interact with the decentralized network.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's although there is a lot of competition in the space, I think you're right. It's can we get grandma to leave all of her Facebook connections behind to come to a decentralized version? But I think, maybe people who are more well versed in decentralized or Web3 will understand the significance of that. And I think crypto's on this. Um, we're on the trend. I think where a lot of people are starting to take notice of it. So it could be one of those things where 5, 10 years time, no one even thinks of it as a crypto transaction that's happening anymore when they're burning energy or sub tokens so that they can start posting, right? So it's just that mindset for the future.
Yeah, I mean, the end goal is to be able to use blockchains without knowing it. If we look back to like the early internet, like no one used it, and now everyone uses the internet and doesn't even think about it. So I think that's where we're going. We just need a lot more technical innovation and time for the user base to grow.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a good place to segue into, how can the regular average Joe user start getting involved in Subsocial?
Well, the easiest way is you make a Substrate wallet. You can use the Polkadot.js wallet. I would recommend using the Talisman wallet. It's much easier to use.
Hmm.
Um, there's no way to get sub tokens at the moment, so you can either find someone that will burn theirs to send you energy, or we still have a energy bot in our Discord channel, so you can get a couple energy there. You can set up a profile. You can start making posts.
Oh, okay. And given that our podcast is Let's Talk NodeSense, we're hoping to ask you: will there be validator nodes in the future for Subsocial? And I mean, I guess we could even say, would apps even on Subsocial have the ability to have validator nodes?
So they won't be validators, they'll be collators since we are a parachain. But
Okay.
yes, we're planning on having nodes. Like I mentioned earlier, we're using the Moonbeam staking palette, I believe. That might be tweaked a little bit, but yes, there will be nodes, and then people will stake to them, and there will be some competition there. Uh, Apps with nodes, I don't think will be a thing. I don't see why they would need a node, since the relay chain's providing the security basically, and the collators are just handling the blocks. But yeah, so there will be nodes.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're really looking forward to that because like the name implies, we really want to try to help drive community engagement and help make sure that people can secure the network and provide the service to assist. Because you know we feel like this is a big project with a big paradigm shift potentially, and we just need to get people to know its name and maybe help those early investors get involved so that they can start using it and help grow.
Yeah, we've got a validators channel in our Discord. And we'll definitely announce once staking is released. And there will be some tutorial on how to set up a validator, get all connected and everything. So
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we include those links in the description for wherever we post this as well. Um, but also, Young Beef, just before we let you go here, is there anything else you wanted to just get out there into the recording? Any places you want us to check out?
um, we do have one other product. It's called Sub ID. That's the URL sub.id. And we made this last year. You know, Polkadot and Kusama, the whole ecosystem is very confusing to a lot of people coming from Ethereum or elsewhere, because we have so many different chains and you have all these different addresses, but it's all managed by one wallet. So we built SubID as sort of a way to see all of your different addresses and balances for an account all in one place. And then we also added crowd loan info and NFTs. And we have a treasury proposal open right now to get more funding, so we can continue building that out and adding more cool features. So you should definitely check that out as well.
Some Well, thank you so much, Young Beef. I mean, this has been really cool to talk about Subsocial, and we can't wait to hear about the updates as they come down the road. Because, like I keep saying, and like a lot of people online are saying, Subsocial's got some potential to really change a lot of perspectives on things. So We really appreciate you coming out to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cooper and Arrow.
Thanks for joining us for block number 4 of the podcast. We would like to again thank Young B for taking the time to sit down with us and talk about the incredible platform that Subsocial is building.
Absolutely. There's so much innovation and potential for this project that could drastically change the way that we all interact with social networks. And we'll have all the links below for how you can learn more about Subsocial.
And as always, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Arrow.
And we'll see you in the next episode of Let's Talk NodeSense.